PirateSoftware has been rightfully being called out for misrepresenting, or misinterpreting at the very least, a Stop Killing Games initiative, and he made this response. Been reading through all of the posts against me over my stance on the Stop Killing Games initiative. Tons of people calling me a liar that I misrepresented the initiative, which I feel is an appropriate way to feel about the situation. Also, lots of content creators dogpiling on this to get their pounds of flesh, which I think is fair. People who misrepresent information and aren't entirely truthful of their motivations should in fact be dogpiled for not being honest. I put out 2 videos on August 6th, 2024 and August 7th, 2024. These videos are linked at the bottom of this post. Many people have not watched them and are just calling me a liar or attacking my character. Give the videos a watch, read the initiative itself, make a conclusion that you aren't copy-pasting from social media. Monetization on these videos is disabled, so no, this is not some ploy to increase revenue. Don't care. In the first video, monetize whatever the fuck you want. I go through what an initiative is, how it's not law, and how it's a starting point with this entire process, okay? This helps people understand that this is to start the conversation for a change and can adapt later, okay? I then go through the initiative and some of its goals from the official page for it, and then I talk about the repercussions of them should they be implemented. So, like, yes, what repercussions? What repercussions specifically? As written, all games need to be left on a functional, playable state, which is a good thing. People, when they buy something, should have a functional product. They should have a functional product every step of the way. If they are paying tens of dollars for something, if they buy a product, they should be allowed to utilize that product until it is no longer utilizable by natural means, whatever natural means would imply in a situation like this. Not because somebody just decides to revoke a license or revoke your access to it. Next, I bring up the crew and walk through the business around it. The sequels and the size of the player base at the time of sunset. I did this because it was called out by this initiative as an example of publishers destroying a game. Yes, because in a situation like this, an example like this, the game could realistically have a model or have a way where it could in fact be played offline without requiring networks or services. If somebody's paying $60 for a game, they ideally should retain access to it, even offline. Even if the online model of it is no longer accessible, there should have been a fashion or an implementation for something like this to be still accessible after the fact. I also harshly critique Ross Scott's wording in his videos because they disparage the lawmakers process and lawmakers, which doesn't benefit players in this movement in any way, which I'm pretty sure this is dishonest. In the second video, I talk about potential scenarios where a studio could be abused if the initiative was implemented as written. It adds new paths for abuse, and that needs to be discussed to help tone this initiative into something that would be a good without doing harm, which I'm pretty sure what he's referring to is talking about how DRM would be like subject to removal, which would allow for people to like continuously pirate games, which isn't true. You can still implement DRM in games. It's just about allowing the games to be playable long after a server is shut down and models where video games can no longer be played because it's exclusive to server-side access, for lack of better words. I'm not an expert. I then explain that very few people in the game development space can actually discuss this from another state, from the other side, due to fear of losing their jobs. Studios much safer in silent dissent than they are discussing the drawbacks of your ideals. The recent attacks on our games is obvious evidence of this. Well, that's because it's not within their bottom lines. They can't talk about it to defend themselves, because any attempt to try to like come against this is actually anti-consumer in nature. So, ideally, if we're gonna have like pro-consumerist laws, then protect a consumer so that they're not spending their hard-earned money on a product that will no longer work long term, even though ideally it should work long term, like evidence, like games in the past. You can still pick up an Xbox, a regular Xbox from like 20 years ago today. You could still buy a copy of Burnout from 20 years ago today, put it in that Xbox, and still play it without any issue. You cannot pick up a game of The Crew with an Xbox One and continuously play it to this day. And the fact that people are moving in that direction is a problem. Consumers should have the ability to continue to use their products long term, if it is possible. My main issue with this initiative is that it has broadened its approach to change the industry in the exact language of this initiative, not the FAQ request that all games stay in a functional, playable state. Yes, that's a good thing. This is not feasible for all games at a technical level, and it could potentially restrict developers from making online-only games like MMOs, MOBAs, and user-generated content games in the future. This has a semblance of reasonability to it. However, I do think that there should be at least an effort to allow these games to have a long-term lifespan and to make them subject to, I want to say, online exclusive access. I don't think that should be the case. I don't think any game should be exclusive to online only. That list is not exhaustive, and it doesn't matter if you do or don't like those kinds of games. Effectively, this has the potential to restrict future developers from making kick-ass experiences because it locks the weight on their designs. Somewhat. That's somewhat true. I would have to say, based on some of my whoa. Why didn't I get a I just noticed that. Sorry, I was too busy reading. Thank you very much, A-Space, for the $50. Thank you, buddy. I very much appreciate that. Jeez, Jesus. Thank you. Seriously. I don't understand why I didn't get, like, a notification of it. I should have gotten a notification. Even though this is an initiative that can change in the future, this goal core to the mission and deeply disruptive zone needs to be canceled out. Okay, so what I want to add here is that effectively, okay, games right now are getting progressively harder to make. MMOs and multiplayer games with an abundance of content so that people don't feel like they're being scammed out of, like, money for a lack of content to, like, include heavy amounts of content and then utilize and implement a fashion and, like, restructuring the game from the ground up to make it playable in the future when, like, online servers are no longer available. I can see how that would be incredibly expensive and add, like, a whole level of cost, especially when you consider licensing to certain programs, especially when you consider licensing to certain engines. I can understand how this could be ineffective long term and how this could disrupt development. Yes, but there should still be an effort to protect consumers. Unless there is an express agreement, which for the most part, games like Warframe, games like Final Fantasy Online, games like Destiny will say that you are your experience in a game is subject to inaccessibility depending on how well the game does or to your like capability of paying for said game. So I mean, at that point it's up to the consumer to it's up to their discretion. So I left AAA in 2016 because I fucking hate how the industry is now and prefer indie entirely. I don't like Blizzard. Or I would have stayed working there. That's why I quit. That's the entire point. Fuck AAA and what many studios have turned games into. I think that this is just moral posturing. He doesn't actually mean anything by it, given the fact that this guy was like, I want to say I forget exactly what he was, but he had played a very major role in Rivals of Aether 2, which the game by itself is a live model game that would be subject to some of these things where if like the servers are no longer available or if they stop supporting the game could no longer be playable in the future. Although I'm not entirely sure how true that is, given the fact that I'm pretty sure Rivals of Aether can be played offline. Correct me if I'm wrong. This just wasn't a problem when people purchase physical media. True. Let's see. Sure, I think the feeling that it shouldn't exist is fine, but it's not realistic. I agree. I agree with PirateSoftware sentiment that realistically, you know that you sign up for always online games, such as The Crew. But I think him not engaging with Stop Killing Games is disingenuous. I agree. I actually do agree. I do agree. People should be aware about the product that they're paying for. They should be aware about the terms of the product that they're paying for, absolutely. But the thing is that games like The Crew are not transparent enough to the subject of those games being removed from you. That's why The Crew is utilized as an example in this case, because there is the possibility that some games, like The Division, like Destiny, those games feel, and they were advertised somewhat, or at least loosely or non-transparently, promoted to be games that you could play offline. However, when you play them, it turns out you require an online connection, and you always will require an online connection, and you will require server support to be able to play the games. If not, you can't play the game. There's a problem. Games should not be sold to you without very, very explicit transparency that the game is subject to be removed in the future if support stops and maintenance stops, or they should be given an alternative to be played after the fact. One or the other. There should be very, very explicit statements to make people aware of this, or offer an alternative. So, games like The Crew should not be subject to potentially misleading marketing, for an example. Well, the thing about the tools argument, Cryptid, about people and players utilizing this themselves is I agree with you, and it's an argument that I made yesterday as well upon initial review. I agree with you, but then you have to consider things like licensing. Games like The Crew do license, I want to say, vehicle brands and names for a limited amount of time. So when you license something for a limited amount of time and then you give free access to players to something that has a limited amount of licensing, then it would be realistically unfeasible, and it should not be a burden of the company to continue to pay that licensing just so players can have unrestricted access or unlimited access to a game, so to speak. That's a problem. Is that them like a company cannot always provide continuous permission for a player that they're providing a product to continuously utilize said licenses on their own. Hello,
Yo,
what's up?
sorry, is my mic okay?
Yeah.
So my issue with the way that most people look at this is that people are like, it's not clear enough that online access is being taken away.
Mhm.
You realize the crew has this when you start up the game. It has a black screen with white text on it that you can click and read, and then you have to press A to continue.
That's not
It's
the
even in the user agreement as well,
that's not the argument that I'm
and on
making.
the back of the box.
That's not the argument that I'm making. That coincides with the claim that I made about users being like it being up to users' discretion, right? Being up to consumer discretion. What I'm saying is that when you market a game, like like the crew, when you're marketing it, making commercials about it, for example, and then like selling it to players, it should be in the marketing that the game is subject to is subject to certain conditions like that.
I think that
It should be
if
more
that,
transparent.
that's a really like nitpicky argument. It's literally everywhere when you start up the game. In what circumstance would that be like a reasonable thing for them to put on screen in like white text when you're seeing gameplay? The company has the right to shut down the game whenever.
All right, can you repeat what you said just the last second, just like the last sentence?
In what way is it reasonable for like in a trailer, like let's say it has gameplay on screen.
Hmm.
At the bottom of the screen, you're basically asking for them to say the company has the right to shut down this game at any time.
Yeah, they should do that.
I I I I think it's clear enough with
That's a
how much.
that's a pro consumer practice in general. Like like there's a lot of they like a lot of companies and a lot of product placements do that already. They make if they don't do it during the advertisement where they say, for example, this is not like in game, this is not captured in game. This is like a
Sure,
pre simulated, right? That already occurs. I'm just saying it should be more
sure, but that's
transparent.
that's to that's to stop a misleading advertisement.
Mhm.
It's to show that this is not actually how the game plays, but when it shows actual gameplay, they remove that from the screen. That's to keep them from getting lawsuits over, oh, this isn't actually how the game was.
Yeah, well,
I don't
think
think
I think
that's
for the
like a
sake
similar argument.
I think the sake for protecting consumers, it should be made very abundant or like very clear in the in the marketing
I
itself.
mean, I
Because,
mean
for
that's
example,
like
when you play a game like
that's like
WoW, when you play a game like WoW or like Warframe, for example, it is like self evident given the model of the game. But for example, a game like The Crew, given the amount, and I know this sounds incredibly nitpicky and kind of like a sort of like like apologia for ignorance. I know it sounds like that, but I think just for the sake of pro consumerism, it should be something that people should adopt. It is a practice that people should adopt.
I mean that's like cool and all, but like let me put it to you this way. I think this is a similar argument. That's like asking any YouTuber who covers commentary drama, all the Turkey Tom, to put on the bottom like half of their screen, "Do not harass these people under any circumstance. I'm just covering the drama at hand."
That is an adopted standard that
You know what
people
I
do,
mean?
though. That is an adopted
They
standard that
put it
people
at the
do.
beginning of the video, but they're not required to do it. Most people aren't required to do it, and it's not like expected of most people to do it.
Yeah,
It's just a general understanding that that's how things work.
yeah. I mean,
Right. So how different is that?
I guess one is going to be realistically because given how like pro consumer laws work, what one is like expected
Sure.
of you lawfully. The other is a moral obligation.
I think that the request that you're asking, where they put that on screen, is kind of unreasonable, especially how clear without interrupting gameplay they make it in most cases. Where, like I said, it says on the back of the box of the crew one, "Hey, we have the right to shut down this game
I
at any
mean,
time. It's hosted by EA.
realistically,
We have the right to take away access to this game."
to be clear, to be clear, realistically, I do not have a what's it called a I do not have a practical argument for you. I don't think that you could ever make this into a
Right.
practical argument, but it should be a I want to say obligation to protect consumers. It would only be like a vibes
Um,
based argument essentially. I would
I like
I would
realistically, I emotionally like agree with you. Like, I don't think I don't think games should have the right to be taken away. I think that's absolutely stupid. But when it's set up in a way where it lets you know almost every step of the way on the box and in the user agreement and on a black screen that appears before you launch the game, like it does in GTA, when you launch the game, it shows the Rockstar logo, and then you see the black text on screen that lets you know Rockstar has the right to shut down this game at any time.
Yeah.
It it lets you know in multiple ways, and I think that most people are framing this as if, oh, this just shut down and we had no clue about it. And most people are like, why don't they give people the access to make servers, private servers, or anything like that?
Yeah.
There are most games that shut down have communities that come together and build private servers. I
Yeah.
think the only example I've really seen of companies targeting that is people like Activision, but they're targeting servers of games that are still able to be fully played online.
Mm. I
You
think
see what I mean? So,
I largely agree with you. I
mhm.
largely agree with you. But essentially, like, the secondary thing that hasn't been touched on yet is that I think companies should have like at least more of a pro consumer requirement to either offer people appropriate refunds or alternatives to the main media.
Yeah, and I think that was handled pretty well with the crew. Steam
Was it? Because
did when
I'm pretty sure before they even I think Ubisoft was not keen on giving refunds, right? Up
well, yeah,
until
yeah. If they
or
weren't, I
any
don't
sort of
know too much.
reimbursement up until they were
Yeah,
sued, and they're still fighting
yeah.
that lawsuit. So
I don't know too much about that, but I know that on Steam, at the very least, they were handing people out refunds. I did end up getting a refund for the game, but I still do have a physical copy of the Xbox version. That's a fair critique of that. Um, However, I do think that the way that the Stop Killing Games movement is laid out, I'd have to get back to you on it. I did see some things that I didn't necessarily agree with that were very unrealistic, like the super heavy. Every game has to be playable um, from start to finish in single player.
yeah,
I believe that was one of the key points of the video, which is super unrealistic. Like, how are you going to play something like League of Legends single player offline?
yeah.
I don't think that's like realistic. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
it's not feasible. But that's the thing
Yeah.
is like it should be made more evident to people. I mean, some of those games like are is incredibly evident that you're not gonna have access to it forever. It's going only as long as you continue to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
But like essentially the motivation now is that any game made in the future should lose the trend of making it subject to removal of your ownership. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
like it should not be a
I
standard. It should not be an industry standard because it is anti-consumer in nature to essentially revoke people access of a product that they paid their hard-earned money for.
Yeah, sure. I do think though that
I
the
mean,
way it's being handled right now
hmm,
with companies, most companies, is perfectly fine.
yeah,
Because you like I said, you have these people online who make private servers
yeah.
and it and most companies don't end up taking it down and the game just continues to exist on. You know what I mean?
I think
It's
to
happening with the
apply,
crew right now. The crew has a private server that's been going on for months and it hasn't been taken down or no DMCAs or anything.
I think to retroactively apply these standards to models that exist right now is
Mhm.
stupid, but to move on with new standards for the market, for the industry in the future would probably be like a really really good thing in terms of pro consumer practices.
Yeah.
So, I
I,
think
I agree ultimately with your sentiment on like stuff needs to change, but I don't think the stop killing games movement needs to be the change that's happening because there's a lot of holes in
well, yeah,
stop killing
well,
games
yeah,
that are just unrealistic.
the initiative itself is a matter of conversation. You can't really expect it to have a really really strong, I want to say, legal wording or uncompromisable. Uh, I want to say you can't expect to not have any caveats. You can't expect to not have any imperfections because it's not something that has been refined. It is literally just an initiative to start a conversation to get lawmakers or get some people to revise some certain changes, right?
I think that's fine, but isn't he? I think the conversation should have been the first thing to happen. I think the conversation should have been like, hey,
I mean,
I'm
even
going to
in his
shoot some
video,
ideas. You tell
e-
me what you guys think.
even if his
But
even in
it's
his
just
video,
immediately being pushed.
no, even in his video at the end, he said that his goal was never to make a legitimate legal and it, like his goal was never to like make a legitimate legal I want to say change. His goal
Mm.
was to get people to consider it so that it could potentially start more legal revisions in the future. Like he makes that
But
pretty clear towards the end of the video.
my problem is that he immediately just wrote up all this stuff
Mm.
and then started pushing it to I'm not too sure how it works in wherever he's from, but he's pushing the government sort of to sign this bill into action rather than having a general discussion, then making the bill and then trying to push it towards whatever
I think he
Congress or
also
whatever they
yeah
have.
I think he also admits in his video that he didn't think that it would ever he said that I don't think he if I'm gonna paraphrase this really, really, really loosely, but I'm pretty sure like he makes the
Sure.
argument that he never expected to actually make like a legitimate legal push or like to like force anybody to like make a bill or whatnot. He just wanted to like get it to the attention of consideration to lawmakers in Europe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's all I had to say
He
pretty much.
lit
I'll let you
yeah,
get back
he
to your stream.
literally all he literally wanted to do was just to like, get it in the eyes of lawmaker. I don't know if you could call them congressmen in Europe. I don't know what their labels are given that, there's so many different people and so many different terms for like people overseas, right? But yeah, I don't think he
Right.
ever tried to make like a legitimate like, legal reform. He just wanted to get it in the eyes of people that could. So,
Right.
yeah,
I'll have to do more research into it, and then if you talk about it again, I'll talk to you about it again.
all right. That's cool.
Because I just sort of came in here candidly,
No, you're
but
you're good. You're good. That's fine.
regardless, I'll let you get back to your stream. It was good talking to you, man.
All
Catch you
right.
later.
Take it easy.
Peace.
All right, good conversation. Good conversation. W combo, as kick streamers say. No, I have not been running away from discourse on this. I talked about it for around 8 hours on stream yesterday. I never took my videos down, and I have not discussed the initiative in the 10 months it's been since I released those videos. My internet has also died mid broadcast, so I had to go live again 30 minutes later. Thanks, ISP. For those that will scream, he's doubling down. Yes, damn well I am. I give a shit about this initiative and what it means for games, developers, and players in the future. No, you only care about what it means for developers. Finish out. Just because I don't support this doesn't mean you should blindly follow me, and just because I said pretty words on the internet. Which, by the way, to be clear, to be specifically clear, to hold and to blame, to blame and to hold Pirate Software accountable, specific for the majority of the failure of Stop Killing Games is absurd. I don't think that one fucking moron on the internet has enough power to essentially induce or sway the opinions of 500,000 people, 400,000 people, 300,000 people, 100,000 people. I don't even think a video that gets a million views is enough to strongly sway the decision or the opinions of even 100,000 people. I think that to imply that Pirate Software themselves has that level of power, that level of like, I want to say that level of what's the word that I'm looking for? What's the word that I'm looking for here? To say that he's like that capable of convincing people of anything is a little bit absurd. I don't think he has that level of power at all. To say that he has that level of influence, I think is absurd. That's what I was looking for. I don't think he has a level of influence. So I'll give him like I'll give him the benefit here. You also shouldn't blindly bash me because some other creator said to. True. I don't think so. But it is very evident that Pirate Software has ulterior motives and did misrepresent this entire situation. It is incredibly dishonest, and he should absolutely be held accountable for that. Should absolutely be criticized for that. I don't think he should be bashed. The criticism, absolutely fair. Watch the videos I put out, read the initiative, decide for yourself. Apply critical thinking, and don't outsource it to others. True. However, can't expect that of everybody because people watch people like more critical to give them their opinion. They don't care to affirm their opinions themselves. They're too busy going out to clubs and doing whatever the fuck it is that they do. I can't even expect my own audience to like legitimately, come to a decision of their own or opinion of their own without me like making an input or without other streamers around my sphere to make an input. But that's besides the point. It's just not a realistic expectation. He hopes that people will do their own due diligence. That's not what they do. He knows that's not what they do. He should be doing a better effort to actually arguing this instead of making like, vague statements about what he believes is going to happen or what he believes isn't going to happen. Anyways, there's a couple of tweets that I've compiled that I want to read. bashing on Pirate Software. I already gave my thoughts. I thought we could have a little bit of fun with this. I thought we could have a little bit of fun with this and do a little bit of Pirate Software scrutiny through other people talking shit. Wait, isn't this you literally admitting on stream that you deleted VODs? Ah,
And like on top of it, I went through the Reddit for their initiative for that, and there were a number of posts in there that were people saying we should keep baiting him and attacking him because if we do that, he'll keep talking about it, and then more people will sign the initiative. They were planning that shit. And those threads are still there. They're still up. People are still talking about that shit on there. So instead of that, I just deleted all the VODs where we were talking about it. I kept my videos up and I walked away.
wait. What is it that he said exactly? Did he say that he never deleted any VODs or that he never deleted any videos? Hold on. This is another something else that they stated, by the way. Talking to Charlie and Josh Strive Hayes for a bit in DMs. If you're mad at me for being a dick to Ross, I get it. I'm sorry for that. I should not have lashed out. I had an emotional response to how important the subject is to me. On the developers, no, I think it's because of ego, not necessarily because of how important something is. Pirate Software is an incredibly egotistical, narcissistic individual. On the developer side, I have been in a constant battle with people online for nearly a decade trying to inform them how difficult it is to make release video games. The idea that any of these technical hurdles are easy to overcome and would be simple to implement is the exact kind of thing I've been fighting. This I can agree with. This I can actually agree with. The idea that it is just easy to make these changes to then provide people indefinite access to products long term is a very naive idea. It's fair to expect it of companies, in my opinion, for the sake of pro-consumerism, right? To protect consumers. However, I'm probably utilizing the term consumerism incredibly incorrectly. However, to naively think that it is just easy to do these things is idiotic. So I think it's fair for him to at least argue these things, but not misrepresent the initiative or handpick what exactly it is that he wants to respond to or talk about, or handpick specific things that he has a problem with or issues that he has problems with. On the developer side, I've been in a constant battle with people online for nearly a decade. Okay. When I bring up the issues with leaving online-only games in a functional playable state after sunsetting, I am always met with responses diminishing the effort needed to do that. Well, the thing is that perhaps you are receiving responses where they diminish the effort needed to do that, yes. But the thing is, as well, is that it should be a standard set to protect consumers. This is not a simple hurdle to overcome. And essentially, what you're what you're trying to fight for here is your right to be lazy, which I understand given the fact that you have failed to develop your games for years on end, and you were incredibly lazy, and claimed that a part of your game was 99% done for months on end. So, I mean, I'm just saying, you can't leave these challenges up to a figure-it-out mentality, and you can't diminish the work of those on the dev side because you want it your way. Now, I mean, companies should have the obligation to deliver products that a consumer can utilize freely, the way they want to, long term, without making it directly without making it directly harmful for the user in a way, like for example, cars should be built to last so that companies so that people don't end up paying more than they have to maintain them. Tools should be built to last so that people can utilize them long term. Equipment should be built to last so that there's no safety risks and people can utilize them long term. Same thing with video games. Video games should be made in a way where people can utilize them long term. People should have the right to own a product for as long as lifespan is realistically for as long as a lifespan for as long as the game can live. Or I can't fucking word this in a proper way. People should be able to utilize games for as long as they want to in a realistic sense. It should have a realistic lifespan. Video games should have a realistic lifespan. And users should be entitled to said realistic lifespan. Movements like this showcase to me how little general public understands about game development. I mean, in general, the public misunderstands very little about all sorts of industries, so this is an unnecessary statement. Modern gaming architecture and online games as a whole. That's why I put videos out poking holes in this, because it sets the entire conversation. No, what it sounds like to me is that you're specifically trying to poke holes because this goes against your class, specifically as a game developer, so you're trying to ego contest some things that you feel like you're entitled to talk about because of your status as a game developer. So I would call this just posturing. So I don't care for this statement. Making shit is hard. Making shit when people think it's easy is harder. If you want all games to be left in a functional playable state, then you need to listen to people when they talk about how infeasible that will be in a lot of situations. And this is initiative primary goal is listed on the ECI pages and kind of important to resolve that. But he did delete VODs, not videos. And in his response, I'm pretty sure that he didn't like, what's the word that I'm looking for? I'm pretty sure in his response, he didn't say that he deleted videos. I never took my videos down. Okay, he never said anything about VODs. He did say he did say that he didn't take his videos down. He did not take his videos down. So that tweet right there that we saw attempting to get an own on him is dishonest. Very, very dishonest. So I don't care for it. But he did delete VODs, which is fair. Responding to this is just a glitch. Having finally learned about the Stop Killing Games movement, it's insane how Pirate continues to double down on this boot-looking pro-corpo perspective, which I can understand, but he's obviously, I don't think he's doing it more so because he's like pro-corporation. I think he's doing it because he feels like personally slighted over his status as a game developer and is trying to, like, again, posture about it. The damage inflicted by PirateSoftware can't be understated. I think people are overstating, if I'm going to be practical and realistic, the amount of damage that PirateSoftware realistically inflicted. He probably did, for example, misrepresent the situation all those months ago, 10 months ago, and he probably did, lead to a handful of people or a large amount of people to hand wave the situation. But I don't think that it's appropriate to say that he directly killed the movement or that he was directly responsible for causing an understated amount of damage. Even worse, this guy's ego never can be wrong. True. This guy's ego is fucking through the roof and horrible. I don't think he commented about this stuff because he cares about, a company's ability to create games. I think he talked about this stuff because he just wanted to, essentially flaunt the fact that he's a game developer and that he knows about the industry and whatnot. I think it's a lot more innocent than that. I'm not misrepresenting the initiative. I'm reading it verbatim and responding to it. So there was a chain of tweets that I wanted to show here that I found pretty funny for you guys. People are absolutely dogging on this guy, calling him an idiot. So how this started is that somebody replied to his statement. Somebody replied to his statement. They say this. You say the initiative demands that all games stay in a functional playable state and call that unfeasible. But you're taking the most extreme reading of that phrase. True. It's an advocacy starting point. True. Not a mandate. True. The goal is to prevent avoidable game destruction, which goes back to the conversation that I had with Chris just now, by the way. Not force every online title to be preserved forever. Framing it as a threat to MMOs and user-generated content games is a slippery slope argument that misrepresents the intent. True. You say this could limit future developers, but most of the concern is about games like The Crew, which could have been saved or patched for offline play. Potentially, depending on how easy or how feasible that would have been. It's not about banning online games, it's about stopping publishers from nuking entire titles because it no longer suits their bottom line. True. These are arguments that I've already made. Pretending this will somehow cripple creativity or stop online design is a false equivalence. I don't know what else to add to this. This is just undeniably true. Your job title and indie status don't absolve you from criticism. Well, I guess the real criticism that you can make is attempting to make games like WoW or Warframe, attempting to retroactively add single player playable states would probably be an incredibly difficult technological hurdle. To go back and add that from the ground up would be incredibly difficult. But to then make a sort of standard for the future about creating games that don't specifically require, an online connection to play, that potentially could have an offline patch, developing a game from the ground up with these things in mind, I can't see it at least being too much of a difficulty. But I might be at it playing into that ignorance that PirateSoftware was specifically arguing earlier. So I'm being a little bit naive there, just to give myself a little bit of a counter argument to myself. Your job title indie status don't absolve you from criticism. Whether or not you profit from live service games isn't the issue. You're a public voice framing this movement as dangerous, and that has weight. Mentioning your minimum wage is a distraction and irrelevant to whether your argument holds up. True. Critiquing Ross Scott's tone more than his message also misses the point. I think that's true as well. But I haven't seen Ross Scott's arguments to the furthest extent that these people are arguing. I have only seen bits and pieces. the ones that I needed to after I stopped streaming yesterday. He's right that consumers have no way when games are taken away. You may not like his delivery, but he's actually pushing for a change. You're punching sideways at a guy advocating for game preservation, while the real problem is the publishers deleting what people paid for. Your criticism focuses on edge cases and ignores that many games could be preserved easily instead of acknowledging the reasonable heart of the initiative, which is a huge point of contention, which is a huge discussion piece here, which is a huge point that everybody should be discussing. It's this. Instead of acknowledging the reasonable heart of the initiative, it's making it seem as if this is a direct illegal push that only serves to harm the way people create games. That's not the case. It is an attempt to get people to look at it, to then start creating reasonable laws or reasonable enforcements or whatever, reasonable moves. You lean on fear of hypothetical abuse. That's not productive. True. I mean, this person just worded it a lot better than I can. You don't have to agree with the initiative, but misrepresenting it and focusing on worst case scenarios while downplaying the real harm being done isn't helping. You say you care, but your approach undermines a good cause. He replies to that by saying this, which I already showed you guys, but we'll look at it again for the sake of editing it later. I am not misrepresenting the initiative. I am reading it verbatim and responding to it. Then he hyper-focuses on this again. Shoots back. Correcting him. I didn't say you're misrepresenting the initiative. I said you're misrepresenting the intent. Why undermine an entire movement that does stand to introduce incredible consumer protections by dismissing it rather than proposing a rewording? Yeah, why undermine it instead of adding to the discourse, but perhaps playing devil's advocacy in a way where you can reinforce the arguments being made, in a way where there are no holes to pick through, so that there are pro-consumer practices being employed in the future through potential advocacy, through potential attention that this is, that this brings forward. Also, tell me you didn't read my response without telling me. It's a fear of hypothetical abuse of the current wording that you're standing on. I think it's true. I don't think he did read his response. Even the follow-up to this tweet. The intent is not what is written. You can argue that what is meant. It's different, but that is irrelevant here. Wait, sorry. The intent is not what is written. You can argue that what is meant is different, but that isn't relevant here. It's not written. Intent is lost when undocumented. I don't even think that's true. I don't even think that I don't even think what he's saying is true. You can argue that what is meant is different, but that isn't relevant here. It is incredibly relevant. It is incredibly relevant here. Yeah, because you're misrepresenting this as something that could potentially cause unreasonable amounts of stress or unreasonable amounts of hurdles to game developers, when in reality it is simply an initiative to spark attention towards something where pro-consumer practices can be employed. I may have completely misrepresented this, but whatever. So Rock Solid, which is a prolific shitposter on the internet, arrogant, and I mean shitposter in a neutral way, where he just posts memes and funny stuff on the internet. Arrogant and narcissistic Blizzard Nepo baby, massive drama queen that refuses to take any accountability, re-watches video games to act smart on stream, alleged DMCA abuser, purposefully misinterprets Stop Killing Games and doubles down on it. Why do people like this guy? Well, because he portrays himself and postures as somebody that is incredibly knowledgeable in the gaming industry, when, as we know, really isn't. And it started crumbling around him earlier in the year with the whole WoW drama. It's not alleged. Pirate did actually attempt a DMCA takedown of an indie Steam game, Idle Streaming Bonanza, because a dev made a bait post on Reddit implying that he'd added a parody version of Pirate shown below into the game. Based. Not only was this blatant abuse of DMCA to protect his bruised ego, the version of the game on Steam hadn't even been updated to include this parody. A fact that neither Pirate nor his alleged on-staff lawyer bothered to check before sending the DMCA. So, this guy, PirateSoftware, is an egotistical, narcissistic crybaby that can't handle his ego being bruised even for a fucking moment or needing to lash out. He's a pathetic bitch that serves no purpose. If you create an environment that puts heavy restrictions or roadblocks on making online-only games, then you will get less online-only games and more single-player or couch co-op games. This isn't hard to understand. You have 2 entire videos to pull from where I list. Don't care. I fail to see the problem here, and it's true. And this is true. I fail to see the problem with okay, there is an oversaturation of online-only games, and the majority of people only play a handful of them. We do not need more MMO slop when the main MMO that anybody fucking plays are games like WoW, Warframe, Destiny 2, or what's it called? Final Fantasy 14. And then there's games that have a continuous live content model that like Fortnite. We should expect enjoyable, shareable, replayable games that aren't exclusively catering to the constant dopamine fix that is provided by live service models. There is enough of these games saturating the market where people only play a handful of them, such as Call of Duty's Warzone, okay? Such as Fortnite, such as Warframe, such as Destiny 2. Give me a game outside of the fucking 10 repeated fucking live service games that are successfully, like, that are like huge and successful. We need more games with replay value that aren't exclusive to this fucking live model, because it's not like anybody fucking plays the saturation anyways. People focus on the main 10, on the main 20. I don't see the problem here. I do not see the fucking problem here. We need to go back. We need to return with a V. We need to return with a V to games that are enjoyable, like Halo 3, like Halo Reach, like Elden Ring. Yes, thank you. We need to return. We need to return. Instead of fucking creating these games that end up dying after a year because nobody bothers to replay them because they'd rather play Destiny. We don't need more. What's a good example? Fuck, I just forgot the example that Nate gave earlier. Fuck. What's the game that you said earlier, Nate? The example that you brought up by EA. I'm so raped. I'm so fucking Anthem. Yes, we don't need more Anthems that cannot compete in the fucking market and then end up dying after 4 months because nobody wants to play that garbage. We do not need more of that garbage that only serves to create e-waste. We do not need people to fucking spend $60 on a game that won't live past a year because they'd rather play Destiny, because they'd rather play Warframe, because they'd rather play Final Fantasy Online, because they'd rather play Skyrim Online or whatever the fucking game is called. What is it called again? Elder Scrolls Online. Because they'd rather play Rust. Because they'd rather play any of these other fucking games. We do not need more slop that'll end up dying because there are already good alternatives. We do not need Dune. We do not need that fucking Dune Rust wannabe clone that'll end up dying in a year because the fad will die. Because the fucking honeymoon phase will die. We do not need more garbage. We need games that are enjoyable on their own without needing an internet connection like Halo Reach. I could sit down and play Halo Reach for hours a day right now because that game is still enjoyable.